With the fresh pages of 2023 right around the corner, it's tempting to close the book on 2022 without a second thought, but I want to talk about all the manga I read this year and discuss my feelings on each and every one of them. I read more volumes this year than any year prior, although that came at the expense of me not watching much anime or playing games. I also didn't finish that many manga, but again, I read a lot of volumes, and that mostly comes from me reading longer series or ongoing ones. Let's go from bottom to top, least amount of volumes to most. I'll skim over some of the earlier stuff and talk a little bit more about the beefier reads. I read roughly a volume and a half of Akane Banashi when it came out, and I really like this manga so far. Rakugo is a deeply fascinating performance art, and while this isn't a replacement for Showa, that's a more contemplative look into what it means to be a Rakugo performer, Akane Banashi is still a lot of fun and offers a unique look into Rakugo. After Kentaro Miura's passing, no one really knew what Berserk was going to be like afterwards, but for as much as it will never be what we would have gotten with Miura, this volume's worth of chapters were incredibly satisfying. I have a lot of hope for the future of Berserk, and I'll leave it at that for right now. I plan to talk about this more later. I grew up playing thousands of hours of Zoo Tycoon and Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. Plus, I always loved dinosaurs and consider myself a bit of a paleo nerd. My girlfriend, knowing these things, bought me the first volume of Dinosaur Sanctuary for Christmas, and I loved it. It has amazing representations of dinosaurs because not only do they have feathers and anatomically correct arms, yes, that's something I deeply care about, they feel like real animals with unique problems to solve. They are not treated as just movie monsters to be shot down, even the massive carnivores. I'm very excited for the next volume. It just sucks that I have to wait until March of next year for it. I quite like Dr. Stone, although I've only seen the anime and read one volume of the manga. I would love to read the manga to completion sometime next year, if possible, now that it's, all done. 14 is just strange. It's an old manga about a chicken nugget becoming the smartest man on Earth and trying to wipe out humanity. I don't know if I'll get back to it, but I'll remember the volume that I did read at the very least. Beyond Journey's End is pretty decent, but I don't know if it's for me specifically. I felt that I got everything I wanted out of the series after the first volume, and I don't know what else it will have to offer. Still, not bad in the least. Sometimes I just read new series I don't know about, especially if they're in Weekly Shonen Jump, and this one just wasn't a hit for me. I don't plan to continue it unless it really takes off in popularity, which I don't see happening. It's a little insane that Goodbye Eri came out this year, and even more insane that Fujimoto managed to make two great one-volume stories in between parts 1 and 2 of Chainsaw Man. This manga is one of his most artful and conceptual works to date, and I would love to see him tackle more short stories after part 2 of Chainsaw Man is finished. The art style for PPPPPP is out there, something that only Danganronpa or Shiki fans might dig, but I like it despite how cluttered and messy the pages are, and I found it pretty endearing all things considered. I'll give it another look one day, maybe when it's finished. Tropic of the Sea was a good little manga from Satoshi Kon before he came into his true genius. It's a tad simple, but nothing about it was particularly bad. Just a nice, short, one-volume manga from one of anime's brightest. Solid read. Finally, we're getting into the series I've read more than one volume of, and wow, Jane Soldier sucks, and I can't believe I even gave it a second volume. It's written by the Akame ga Kill author, so I hoped it would be a dumb, gory bloodbath of a battle shonen, but it isn't exactly that from what I read. I might complete it one day, but only if it delivers on entertainment. So far, it's only mindless boobage, and that's about it. First Dorohedoro, and then Dan, and now Doron Dodoron. When will it end? I've yet to finish this one, but I thought there was some stuff to like despite being somewhat directionless. I'll finish it sometime soon, if only because it was cute. I admittedly only read Yozakura Family because it's one of the closest things to Twin Star Exorcist, and I wanted to fill that void with something. I don't totally love this manga or its characters, nor is it really all that much like Twin Star, but it's fairly cute, and I could see it being a nice bedtime read. I think I read 2 volumes of Tales of Wedding Rings this year. It's hard to keep track because I've been keeping up with it since 2016. I think it's a total slog and not worth reading for any other reason than to see how it ends at this point. I've been waiting this long, I'm gonna see it through. God, does it suck though. Last time I talked about Yashiman, I did it dirty. I talked about it not being as good as Hell's Paradise, which is fair, but I also compared it to Chainsaw Man, which wasn't as fair. I mean, it wasn't even trying to do the same thing. Still, what held Yashiman back was a lack of room to spread its wings. It had nice artwork and likable characters, but it never quite took off from the ground until the fateful day that it got cancelled. The ending is also just not very good, however insightful it might have been. This is one of my bigger disappointments of the year because I do love Hell's Paradise, and I think there was potential here, but it's all wasted. Oh man, speaking of disappointments, it stinks to be a fan of someone's works and then just not like something new they put out into the world. I love Gantz and Inuyashiki, but Gigant is a failure on most fronts. The main character is the worst. The plot is the worst he's written. The art is the worst he's drawn in decades, with the worst implementation of photographs, with the worst perspective. It's the worst. And yet I can't hate Gigant. It's just too silly and ridiculous, especially by the end, for me to hate it. I read it for years and so many parts were hilarious. I mean, come on, this is Oku. We know what we're getting here. I'm glad I finished it and had an okay time for as bad as it was. I liked In This Corner of the World, but I felt that the topic was more interesting on paper than actually reading it. I've said it before, but I think I would enjoy the movie more than this because a lot of pages were a drag to get through. I appreciate it for what it represents though. I read some of One Punch Man this year, and despite not getting past what the anime adapted, it's such a joy to read, whether it's the webcomic or the remake. I love both for different reasons, but I really want to catch up to both next year. Yep, this one was just alright until it got weird and it didn't stick the landing at all. I didn't think it was bad for the most part, but I wouldn't recommend it overall. It's mostly forgettable and only memorable in ways that I don't think it should have been. I started reading Uzumaki 9 years ago, and it took until today for me to finally put it to rest. Only for me to realize I just don't love Junji Ito's style of horror. I appreciate his outstanding artwork and some of the body horror, but most of it came off as too goofy for me to find creepy or unnerving. Some chapters were total misses as well, despite a handful of engaging episodic stories being told. Overall, I'm glad I finally finished it after nearly a decade, but I can't say I love it as much as its fans. I don't want to say much about Bakuman just yet. I think I'll have more to say when I finish it, but for now, I'll just say that it's a wonderful look into manga creation, and I especially love learning more about the editors and their role in the manga being published. Fantastic read so far, and it lives up to the legacy of Death Note, if it doesn't even surpass it a little. I read part 1 of JoJo for the second time this year, marking the 7th time I've seen the part overall, continuing from the 2nd volume after starting it up in late 2021. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a lot of fun in pockets of its dramatic storytelling and over-the-top fights. I would gladly see it an 8th time in another 10 years from now. I'm frankly tired of it right now. I put myself through this rereading for purposes of editing my 350,000 word analysis of JoJo, and I'll be continuing for each part into the new year. I'm halfway done with Blame, and I feel like I'm not going to understand it any more when I finish it than now. The story is just so esoteric that it's a little hard to follow along with. The background art and design work is amazing, even if the character art blows chunks. There's a dark beauty in this world, and I find myself drawn into it whenever I get the chance to read a volume. I need to buckle down and finish it ASAP because I love works like Ghost in the Shell or Technolize, cyberpunk stories that are slow and contemplative. Blame is a future favorite in the making. I read both Devilman and Shin Devilman combined in the 7 Seas release, and it's a pretty kick-ass manga. Despite Mazinger Z and Cutie Honey's great importance to manga, Devilman is significantly more focused and driven than both of them. It's also just batshit insane. I can imagine this manga made a lot of parents concerned in the 70s. Slight cultural insensitivity aside, I can't help but appreciate just how insane Shin's stretch of 5 chapters was. Hitler, Joan of Arc, and Native Americans, it kinda has it all. That said, it has no real conclusion, nor does it tie that well into the original manga storyline. In the 7 Seas release, it just kind of happens in the middle of the original Devilman. Either way, I had fun with its cheesy stories and thought the art had some pretty sick highlights. Shin is a little more than offensive, but getting over that issue, the whole of Devilman is a total romp of old school ultraviolence, and it has some really neat ideas buried under its skin. I plan to reread all of Oyasumi Punpun for a follow-up video to one I made in 2016, but damn if it wasn't hard to go back to it. I've only read the first 5 volumes once more, but for as much as I adore this manga, it's a bitter pill to swallow when I know it's going to tear me up all over again. I'll finish the reread when I feel like it. Hopefully next year. We'll see. Hey yo, I read 6 more volumes of Naruto. I'm inching my way through part 2, and I should be done in another 10 years. Stinky! Stinky! It's Stinky! I hate this stupid Forsaken manga. How we could go from Death Note and Bakuman, 2 outstanding series, to this trash is so far beyond me that I don't even have words to explain my disappointment. It took me over a year to finish it because every time I tried to read a chapter, I'd immediately regret wasting my time. This is total and utter garbage. I hate its character writing. It's super cringe and try hard, and its ending is unfathomably bad. Spy Family is super cute, and I love it. I already made a video about what makes it a great series, but to summarize, I love how it uses each character's traits to make an endearing, fun, and wholesome family dynamic. Lloyd, Yor, and of course Anya are all highlights of my 2022. Dandadan is one of the most exciting manga that has come out in years. It's an incredible mix of all kinds of series I love. Chainsaw Man, Gantz, FLCL, Twin Star Exorcist, and more. Awesome action, fantastic artwork, heartfelt character writing, and absolutely bonkers humor. It's a blast, and I love it. I'm a little behind on new chapters because I like to read a bunch of it all at once, but I'll be reading more next year. Just you wait. The reason I was disappointed in Ayashimon was Hell's Paradise, a new favorite manga of mine. It's a non-stop attack, a manga that is full of bloodshed, deadly battles, and pummeling violence. This is what a battle shonen would look like if every encounter was a fight for survival, plenty of which are lost. Yet it has so much tender emotion wrapped up into its otherwise hopeless story. For as dark as it might get, there's an everlasting and beautiful light at the end of the tunnel, a reason to keep pushing forward. I had a great time with this one, and I hope its anime adaptation is just as good. I'm not talking about this one. It's trash. Save yourself, don't read it. My beloved Twin Star Exorcist. These volumes were incredible, especially all the chapters that came out this year. Twin Star probably hyped me up the most out of everything I read. Go see the second channel if you don't believe me. My boy! And I genuinely fell deeper in love with this series over the past year. I'll keep recommending it as much as I can because I want people to give it a chance. More videos about it will be coming to the channel next year, I am sure. A big turn of events for me was my sudden growth in love for Jujutsu Kaisen. I made a whole video about it, so I don't have anything new to say here. These volumes were what sold me on the series. The Shibuya incident arc is just amazing in a lot of ways. Honestly, it turned the series from like being good to me to being kind of amazing, not gonna lie. Death Note was the first anime I watched, going on 12 years ago now. I may have lost touch with it for quite a number of years, but reading the manga after all that time was so incredibly rewarding. I found that I didn't just love Death Note like I used to, I loved it more because I saw how much better the second half of the story was compared to the adaptation. Again, I made a video about that, so go check that out if that interests you. Also, an early anime for me was FMA. I loved it for years, and just like Death Note, lost touch with it over time. Sadly, I haven't had the chance to finish the manga, but I firmly believe it's the best version of the story, even if 2003 will always have a place in my heart. The pacing is great, and the glossy pages in the hardcovers do a great service for the artwork. I absolutely plan to finish FMA within the next month. I read Tokyo Ghoul, then also read the first 2 volumes a second time. I have a lot of thoughts on it, and there's an exceedingly ambitious video I have in mind relating to it that I would like to make soon. However, as far as Tokyo Ghoul goes, I liked it a lot. It has world building issues, and some of the lore is poorly constructed, but the emotional catharsis of the story is great. I'm glad I finally finished it after leaving it on hold at 8 volumes for more than half a decade. I still haven't gotten to read, and I guess I'm a little nervous about it from the things I've heard, but I'll be giving it a go sometime next year. After being stuck in the first 10 episodes of Hunter x Hunter's Chimera Ant arc for roughly 6 years, I was finally able to complete it this year through the manga, and they weren't lying. It's one of the greatest shonen arcs ever made. Everything about its writing was beautiful, and the fights, for as long as they dragged on for, were rich in believable character conflict. It has so much to say, so much to chew on, so much to appreciate. I love this arc, and it pushed Hunter x Hunter further into my top 10. I also read the Election arc and the beginnings of the Dark Continent saga, both of which were great. I can't wait to see more of it, but frankly, what matters the most is that I was able to see Chimera Ant in full, and it even managed to surpass the massive hype that was built up for me. 2022 was the year I finally became a full-fledged Hunter x Hunter fan. I reread part 1 in full completion once and read half of it a third time, plus I'm up to date with part 2. I don't feel like I can say much more that I didn't say in previous videos or that other people haven't said in theirs. Glad part 2 is great though, and maybe there will be something to talk about there when it's done. Yeah boy, I reread part 7 with a friend during his first time reading it, and yeah, part 7 is still one of the best manga ever made. It makes me reconsider if I should allow myself to give parts 4 and 5 10 out of 10s, despite my adoration of those parts, because Still Ball Run is just that outstanding. I've seen the story 3 times now, and I could go for a 4th ride across America at this very moment. I love this damn story so much. Johnny and Gyro are forever my 2 favorite characters in manga, and I couldn't ask for a better pair of ding-dongs to spend 24 volumes with. Once again, I made a video on Kaguya already. I didn't love it like other fans, but I still got a great deal of enjoyment from it. I don't know that I would ever want to read it again, but sometimes an enjoyable one time around the block is all I need. Getting to the 2 biggest manga that I read this year, I should start by mentioning that I'm in the middle of One Piece's Dressrosa arc. I read over 60 volumes this year, and I adored every single one along the way, except for a few. Listen, not every volume in a 100 plus volume story is going to be gold, but One Piece has a heart of gold. There's so many incredible moments I witnessed this year, and One Piece took up at least half of them. Multiple arcs and sagas are near perfection, and journeying across this outlandish world with some of the most lovable idiots around is one of the best experiences I could ask for. I can't say much new about One Piece. It's all been said a billion times before, but that'll never stop it from being one of the greatest manga of all time, and I will be catching up to it in the very near future. I read less volumes of this last series than I did One Piece, but I wanted to talk about it last because it means the world to me. This year I learned that if you are a person that needs a positive force in your life, something to make you believe that there's a point in pursuing a dream, or a story that encourages you to try your hardest to make a happy life for yourself, there is no better manga to read than Space Brothers. Even if your life path has twists and turns, ups and downs, even if you're getting a late start, it's never too late to start being true to yourself. This is, without a doubt, one of the most insightful and moving stories that I have ever had the privilege of reading, because it genuinely inspires me to grow as a person and to not give up on my dreams. This manga has one of the greatest character casts in anything I've ever seen. There's dozens of incredibly well written characters, and I mean like 50 top-notch characters. So many interesting personalities with their own goals. Each one is given the utmost attention, and their interconnected relationships are so believable. After over 40 volumes of incredible manga, there's been story and emotional payoffs that have taken those 40 volumes to reach, with each one being better than the last. This is a manga where the emotion can range from a character finally making their dream of going to space come true, to a character triumphantly proving to themselves that they can overcome PTSD. This is not just another manga I read this year. It's truly and honestly the most special story I've ever read. It's about people overcoming their challenges, remembering all the people that helped you get to where you are, supporting one another through the worst times, and always trying your best no matter how hard things get. It's such a human story with realistic lows and optimistic highs. It makes me believe that everything will be okay if I do what I can with my life to better myself and those around me. And that's a beautiful message that I think most anyone should be able to appreciate. If Berserk wasn't my favorite, Space Brothers would be, and honestly, it's hard to even say that I could put anything above it outside of an arbitrary list of my favorite manga. In my heart, it's as good as any other #1 favorite. And that's going to remain true going into 2023 and years going forward. Well, that's been my list of everything that I read this year. A lot of shonen, a lot of seinen, not much else, tons of action stuff, couple comedy things, a couple regrets, but for the most part, I was pretty happy with what I read this year. I think next year I do want to try reading more shoujo and josei manga, maybe a couple other genres I didn't dabble into this year. I played it safe for the most part. A lot of what I checked out this year was pretty by the numbers, so I'm gonna try and shake that up next year. But, you know, when that time comes, I'll be making another video next year about everything I read in 2023. Just gotta wait until then.